While the NFC South might be the weakest division, one team built a juggernaut of a defense. Stay tuned to find out which team in the division is best prepared to win in 2025. All right, last grade video. NFC South, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the team that won the division last year. Ryan, how would you grade it?
It's an A-. It's one of my favorite drafts, honestly, in this entire cycle overall, and one that I think has gone really under the radar. Jason Light, the general manager for Tampa Bay, has seemingly done this kind of consistently over the last few years. But I think it really starts, Joe. Emeka Egbuka, I think, is a fine value at 19. But it wasn't necessarily the pick that I thought they were going to make. Like, I didn't think wide receiver would be that high on the priority list for them. But then they come back, and I thought cornerback would be a spot at 19 they would take. And then they doubled it back to back and get Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback out of Notre Dame, and then a really good pick in Jacob Parrish, the cornerback out of Kansas State, who I expect to play a lot in the nickel. So they didn't attack the need that I thought they were going to early in this draft, which made it kind of a weird feeling to start. But I really think getting the value of Morrison falling due to the injury and then Parrish there, who's one of the more slept on and just more underrated prospects in this entire draft, I really love a lot of what Tampa Bay was able to do this year.
This was a B-plus draft for me because I look at all of their first 5 picks, and they might have found a starter or a key rotational player with all 5 of these. The Tez Johnson pick, it is what it is. I think he could be a great kick returner for you. That is the value you get with him in the 7th round. He slides because of that combine performance. But Emeka Egbuka, as the receiving room starts to age a little bit, you have some youth and reliability in him. Benjamin Morrison, if he heals up, could end up being an elite starting outside corner for you, at least a very good one, but his health is a question mark. I loved Jacob Parrish. He was one of my favorite players, one of my highest graded slot corners. He's plug and play right away. And then Elijah Roberts, David Walker provide you very unique skill sets as pass rushers that can be deployed in specific situations. They have shown a propensity to do that and a focus as they have developed and utilized their defensive line. So finding body types for specific roles, I absolutely love it. Let's move on over to the Atlanta Falcons, who had a very interesting approach this year. How would you grade the Falcons?
I mean, it's tough with the Falcons because they only had 5 overall selections, right? You kind of look at what they were able to do just from a pure volume perspective. I love the players they drafted, right? But then we have to have the conversation of, was it too much to trade back into the first round for the Tennessee pass rusher, James Pierce Jr.? I ended up with a B+ here, Joe, because I just, in a vacuum, love the first 4 selections. I think Jalen Walker makes a lot of sense for them as a pure outside stand-up rusher. James Pierce Jr. is a top 10 overall talent in this class. He was able to keep his head on straight. And then you kind of double dip at safety, which was a little bit interesting. But Xavier Watts, this is the one that I really want to highlight. Xavier Watts, I thought had a chance to go in the top 64 selections, a top 2-round guy. He ends up being the selection there at number 96 overall. You get to pair him now with Jesse Bates III, who's one of the better ball hawks in the entire NFL. The safety position for Atlanta has playmakers and playmakers everywhere. Billy Bowman apparently is going to play in the nickel for Atlanta. That's kind of the ideology for that selection there. So love the first 4 selections, man. I think they knocked it out of the park. It just got docked slightly as far as from not quite getting to an A grade because there was only 5 overall selections.
This was a B grade for me, but this is a circumstance where they can earn extra credit. It's one of those grades where, okay, you did a good job, but if you hand in this extra assignment next week, you can end up bumping this up to an A+. And what I mean by that is that you traded next year's first, okay? That puts pressure on you. It puts a lot of pressure on you. If you don't make the playoffs this upcoming year, it's still a good draft. You still have a budding, explosive pass rush that you just created. But if you go to the playoffs this year and James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker both accumulate over, let's say, 8 sacks, one of them goes over 10 or 11 or maybe even 12, and they're a reason for your defense completely showing signs of explosiveness, just dominance. That is how this turns into an A+. This is one of the few grades that has a bit of a contingency placed on it, where if you're able to accomplish what this pick was intended to do, then I'm all in on it. But they got to make the playoffs. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about, hey, can Raheem Morris actually turn this team around? I like it. I like the philosophy.
And a quick note, too, is that they, with the least amount of picks they had, they really supplemented it in the undrafted free agency aspect of it, too. And they found a lot of good players in free agency. So It might not be flashy on paper of the top 5 selections as far as like pure volume, but they have found a lot of talent this offseason.
Let's move to the New Orleans Saints. How would you grade them?
This is a C- draft. Is how I will grade them. Yes, I honestly was between C- and D+. I didn't want to be like complete F because I think that was a little bit mean. But here, Kelvin Banks Jr., good football player, like the offensive tackle out of Texas, should not be a top 10 NFL draft pick. I just think that was a little bit too rich for me. You drafted Tyler Shuck in the top 40. Little bit too high for me. You drafted Vernon Broughton, 71 overall, the defense tackle out of Texas. Guess what, Joe? It's a little bit too high for me. Like, there was just a whole lot of, hey, man, it's a little bit too high. Shout out, though, to Jonas Sanker, the safety out of Virginia. Him. I think that was probably the best value play of this entire draft. You could maybe argue with Quincy Riley for that distinction, but for most part, a lot of the early picks especially, it was just a little bit too high for me.
I'm giving him a D+. Okay, taking Kelvin Banks and not wanting to miss out getting on an improved offensive line, I don't mind it. I like Jonas Sanker, who I think ends up being a starting safety for you. I like Quincy Riley, and I think Devin Neal could carve out a role. The rest of these picks just feel like picks. They just feel like hey, yeah, we kind of need a defensive tackle. Why don't we take Vernon Broughton? There were a lot better defensive tackles in this class than Vernon Broughton, where you took him early in the 3rd round. I just don't feel like there was a lot of value found with a lot of these prospects. I think that you were just taking guys to fill spots, and they're multiple years out. They are not a team that is going to immediately be competitive. They need to still figure out the quarterback situation. My biggest part with this is I don't think Tyler Shuck is their answer. I think this is a Davis Mills type pick. I think this is a guy that's big, strong arm, has some tools, will shine a little bit. But when you're picking in the top 10 this upcoming year, you better take a quarterback. Don't fall for the fallacy of believing that a little bit of upside with Shuck keeps you from finding a true franchise-altering player. Second-round quarterbacks very rarely end up actually panning out to be what you hope them to be as you develop them. Let's close out with the Carolina Panthers. How would you grade their draft?
I think this one's going to surprise you, Joe. I think this is going to surprise you a little bit. I ended up giving this a B+, and here's why. I do not like the Tetairoa McMillan pick at number 8 overall, the wide receiver out of Arizona. I think that is just too high for me. I think they should have went a different direction. I don't agree with the value there. But the rest of the class, in my opinion, is an A+ draft. I think it's an A+ draft from there. Nick Scarton, the defensive end out of Texas A&M. You also double dipped and found Princely Umanmielen a little bit later than I thought he was going to go. The pass rusher out of Ole Miss. Lathan Ransom there in the 4th round. I mean, you can go down the list, and I think from that first selection, it was value after value for Carolina. So didn't love the first selection, but I thought it was an A+ draft outside of that. So I'll give it a B+, high grade outside of the pick.
I'll toss him a B. And a lot of this comes from me not liking the Tet pick. Look, I think Tetairoa McMillan, and I've said this, he needed to land in the right situation where there was not going to be immense pressure on his shoulders to become the number 1 option. There's a world where Tet can end up becoming a really successful player in the NFL, but I thought that he would be best served joining a team that already had a number 1 receiver. I thought the Cowboys would have been perfect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought that the Chargers would have been perfect, even though they don't really have like a number 1 receiver, but you already have Ladd McConkey. If defenses are able to target him and slow him down, he is not a guy who I think wins in double coverage with bracketed coverage the same way that he did in college. He was going up against some of his best games are against some mediocre corners that aren't really going to touch NFL rosters. Guys that, well, what was the other one? It was Northern Arizona.
What was the game where he had 300 yards this year? Was that New Mexico? I feel like that was New Mexico, was it not? I could be wrong.
Well, but Northern Arizona, he got like completely shut down. But my whole point is that he is a gifted player, a jump ball dominator. I worry that when he's actually squaring off with guys that are tall, long, and physical as he is going to get completely depleted in his production. But I agree with you. I think that landing Umanmielen and Scourton revamps your defensive line. The pass rush, I now feel like your pass rush is going to be dominant because you have two different body types and two different levels of explosiveness. And the rest of these picks, as you mentioned, there are traits to be capitalized on. A B, I think, is pretty fair to go with here with the Panthers. Folks, let us know in the comments. Do you agree with our grades? Hit that like button and subscribe. We'll talk to you later.